Well, good morning. Happy Tuesday from Central Virginia. I hope that your week is off to a good start. Well, we had the 4th of July weekend, and then last weekend, it seems as if it was released publicly that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, was apparently brain dead. Some people say that they spoke to him, but there hasn't really been any proof of life. And his wife, Elaine Chao, took off to go back to China a couple days after he had a pretty serious bout with his illness. She's not even an official member of the United States government, and yet she was meeting with one of the Chinese vice presidents. Her father is a Chinese billionaire. I believe he's engaged in the shipping industry or something like that. So that sends up some red flags, no pun intended. I haven't seen any real live video of Mitch McConnell since that time he was giving a speech and he glitched. He just froze up, like he didn't know what to say. Then there was another one where he was walking. A reporter or a journalist was asking a question of him, and he collapsed and fell down. So who knows if he's still around. But apparently the governor of Kentucky is supposed to appoint somebody to fill out the rest of his term. Then Lindsey Graham, senator from South Carolina, who used to hate Trump, but lately has been a very strong Trump ally, goes for a visit to Ukraine and comes home and dies of a sudden short-term illness. Well, could the Russian operatives have gotten to him? Now they're saying it was a tear in his aorta or something. Nobody really knows. The guy was 71, had a long history as a JAG officer in the Air National Guard in South Carolina and the United States Air Force. I think he was on active duty and as a reservist for a total of 33 years or something like that. And he had retired with the rank of full colonel, which is clearly respectable. But anyway, love him or hate him, some people say he was a warmonger. He was, they'll say he was a Zionist, he was pro-Israel or whatever. But Lindsey Graham is one of those guys, you kind of really wanted to like him. And you always sort of knew where he stood. So, I don't take joy in anybody's death. And I'm not really all that disappointed to read the obituary. I mean, politicians come and go. That was kind of weird. Then I saw something in the news about Phil Collins recently. That guy is one of the most talented musicians ever. Apparently, he has some major health issues going on now. He's probably, I would guess he's in his late 70s now. The guy could sing, write, compose, play almost any instrument. Very talented with or without Genesis. He could tour with Genesis. He could do solo stuff too. So I'm sorry to hear that he's having health issues. But man, one of my favorite Phil Collins albums was from 1985. It's called No Jacket Required. The front is kind of a burnt orange color. You'll know it if you see it. It has songs like Who Said I Would, Susudio, and Inside Out are probably some of the best songs on there. I mean, especially with headphones, you can just jam out with that. Brilliant musician. But anyway, as we go on through the summer, politically, the midterms are coming up. Here in Virginia, I live in what's called the 5th U.S. House District. It's represented by a man named John McGuire. He used to be a Navy SEAL, and he wears the trident, the Navy SEAL trident on his suit jacket. I met him in person a couple different times when he was serving in the State House of Delegates. He's just a short guy. You look at him and you don't think there's anything imposing about him, but he used to do this Navy SEAL fitness thing. And back when I was training for the half marathon, I met him and he took off his jacket and I'm like, wow, that dude is jacked. But you just look at him, he's this just short, unassuming guy, but he is totally jacked. His brother is the Commonwealth's attorney for one of the counties in the rural area outside of Charlottesville. Found that pretty interesting. I didn't know they were related at all until just recently. I never met his brother, but I did meet John McGuire. He is being opposed in a Republican primary by a woman named Melanie Lucero, Lucero. She's a Marine Corps veteran, and she's running against him in the primary. They're both, I would say she might be from his right a little bit, but they're both very, very Trumpy. They both are very closely related to Donald Trump on the issues, and they both claim to be MAGA. Not sure she has much of a chance, but I do like to see races that are not unopposed. It's always good when somebody else gets out there. So best of luck to her. I still haven't voted in the primary. I actually met her too. I met her and her husband. Nice woman. Very, very tough. She's a private pilot. I believe she sells real estate, and she feels she's pretty much almost the same on the issues as John McGuire. I think she's trying to come from it from the standpoint of being an outsider. But Melanie Lucero is her name, and she's running to defeat him in the primary. But whomever wins the 5th District Republican primary on August 4th, and early voting in Virginia has already started, but the winner will face off against the Democrat running for that seat. I believe there are 3 in the Democrat primary, but the presumptive nominee is Tom Perriello. People know him because he held the seat. It's been almost 20 years ago. He was in that seat, I believe, just for one term. I don't think he served 2 terms. Maybe it was one term, like 2008 or 2009, somewhere around there. He was the 5th District representative in Congress. Now, the boundary lines have changed a lot since then. The 5th is probably more conservative now than it was 15, 20 years ago. The way the district works now, it runs from, I believe, almost all of the city of Charlottesville, nearly all of the county of Albemarle. There's a little tiny part of Albemarle that's up in the 7th. And it runs all through Fluvanna, Louisa, the western sections of Hanover County, almost all of Goochland County, Fluvanna County, Amherst, Bedford, Lynchburg, on down that area. It goes all the way down to the North Carolina line. It's a very big district by size, and it's mostly rural. With the exceptions of maybe Lynchburg and Charlottesville, it's mostly a rural district. It leans, I would say it leans pretty heavily Republican, but it's not a guaranteed Republican seat. But Tom Perriello is running. He's following the Abigail Spanberger school of thought. Campaign center, but govern left. He's trying to come across as a populist, that he cares about affordability and, making things cost less. But we all know he's going to vote for any tax increase that the Democrats want. He's going to vote for inflationary monetary policy. He's going to vote for more free stuff for illegal aliens. He's going to vote for more subsidies and this and that, which subsidies do not make anything cheaper. That's not to say that John McGuire is exactly the most solidly fiscally conservative guy around. He's probably not. But Tom Perriello is not going to make things more affordable, just like Abigail Spanberger didn't when she got elected to be governor. His math, his numbers don't add up. He's trying to put himself out there that he cares about working families. And from what I've seen of him, he actually does seem like, a guy who'd be a good neighbor. He seems like a nice guy. But if the Democrats do win the majority in the House, he's just going to be another vote to impeach Trump. He's going to be another vote to, defund ICE and all this stuff. He's not exactly what you would call a classic Virginian or somebody who really cares about the Commonwealth. I believe he does live in Charlottesville, which is Charlottesville is like a blueberry surrounded by tomato soup. Virginia's a rather blue state, but this area tends to be rather red. If you take out Charlottesville and Albemarle, a lot of the outlying areas are red. But the 5th district goes from, like I said, the 7th district is above it, and then to the east you have the 1st district represented by Rob Whitman, and then you might have some of the 4th district represented by what's her name? Jennifer McClellan. She took over when Donald McEachin died. She's a Democrat, and Rob Whitman is a Republican. And then to the west of the 5th, you have the 6th, which is the Shenandoah Valley, represented by Ben Klein. So this area is probably favored to win Republican, but anything's possible. Tom Perriello will undoubtedly capitalize on any anti-Trump sentiment. So the election is also a referendum on what you think of Donald Trump. So it's going to be an interesting race, and somebody will ask me, who are you going to vote for? I'm going to be like, are you going to vote for the Republican? I'll probably say, no, I'm going to vote against the Democrat. There is no libertarian candidate in the race, and as far as I'm aware, there's no independent who is declared. So it's a binary choice. Moving on to the primary, which is also scheduled for August 4th, and early voting has begun statewide for the Republican nominee to face off against Mark Warner, the current incumbent Democrat senator. Now in Virginia, we don't register by party, so everybody is technically an independent or unaffiliated. That means any voter can vote in any primary. Now, in my district, if there's a Democrat primary for the 5th and there's a Republican primary for the 5th, for the House district, when you go to the registrar's office or you request an absentee ballot, you get a Republican ballot or a Democrat ballot. You can vote in either one, you just can't vote in both when they're the same day. For the U.S. Senate, which is statewide, not just in the 5th district, it's statewide everywhere in Virginia, you have 3 Republicans on the ballot who are challenging Mark Warner. Since Mark Warner is a Democrat and he's the incumbent, there is no Democrat primary. Now, that means Democrats can vote in the Republican primary to sabotage it. Not suggesting anybody do that, but it's been known to happen before. Anyhow, there are 3 candidates. The first one is a guy named David Williams. He's a former CIA operative, pretty conservative on most issues. I met him once, just briefly. Seemed like a decent guy, but the part that he worked for the CIA a long time is kind of disconcerting to me. The second person is Kim Farrington, Farington, one R. Kim Farrington, I believe she's a businesswoman, something to do with, I think she does something with accounting, but she's very smart. I met her briefly last spring. She's also running. I believe she has some kind of intelligence background as well, but very articulate, very smart. Just don't know how many people really know her. And I believe she's from Northern Virginia, which kind of, to some people down here, that's going to be a turnoff. I don't know what part of the state David Williams hails from. The third candidate, probably the best known, is Bert Misusawa. He's of Japanese ancestry, graduated from West Point. From what I understand, he was top in his class. I'm not sure about that, but I think he was. He graduated like in 1978 or something like that, had a long, distinctive career, retired as a major general, which is a 2-star. A lieutenant general is 3-star. He retired as a major general, which is a 2-star. And he did work as an advisor to Donald Trump. He's shown pictures of himself flying on Air Force One with Donald Trump seated near him. So I think he's trying to shore up some of the MAGA vote. Now, he's pretty conservative on issues, and I do believe he did say he was in favor of some kind of law or policy that would ban Sharia law. And I don't really know what exactly that entails, but keeping Sharia law out of the United States is not a bad thing. Mark Warner has been in the Senate. He's coming up to the end of his third term. He's seeking a fourth term when he said he would only run for 2 terms. So he's long past his expiration date, so he needs to be retired. And then in 2030, they can work on getting rid of Tim Kaine. But we got to get to that bridge before we can cross it. Anyway, Bert Mizusawa is probably the best at being able to raise money, which he's going to need a lot of. It's a shame that you need tens of millions of dollars to run a campaign for U.S. Senate, that it's become like that. But that's the reality of it. There's going to be a lot of out-of-state money coming into this race, both on the Democrat side and the Republican side. Here again, there's also not a declared libertarian or independent candidate in the race who is going to be on the ballot. So once again, we're faced with a binary choice. Are any of these 3 Republicans what you call ideal? Probably not. They're all, I would say, they all are kind of establishment, but are all 3 of them much better than Mark Warner? Oh, absolutely. Do they drink as much as Mark Warner? I don't know if that's possible, but it sure seems like he seems like he's got a drink in his hand when he's at every any kind of campaign function, and he's kind of got that look on his face like somebody who's been to the bar a couple times. But anyway, he's he's had a long career in politics. He was governor. I believe he got his fortune in the telecommunications industry, probably cell phones back in the day. He's super rich. Let him go on and retire and enjoy his life. He doesn't really do anything for the Commonwealth. He's big government, toe the Democrat line all day long. So it's time for him to go. The question is, who's going to be the best one to unseat him? Probably Bert Mizusawa. But like I said, any of the 3 would be better. So if you live in Virginia, that's a choice you have to make. Then you've got Donald Trump with this war thing. Now he's saying that the strait is closed again. I mean, this guy's like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. I understand some people just adore President Trump and think he's the greatest thing since sliced bread, but sometimes he's not the best ambassador for his own cause. Now, maybe he has access to intelligence data that we don't know about. I don't know. Something else to consider is that Air Force One plane that was, I believe it was donated by Qatar. And now there's this, it's kind of behind the scenes and under the wire. But there's been reports that he chose not to fly on that plane because he didn't think it was safe. And there was something about reporters who knew about it but didn't say anything. Possible sabotage involved. I don't know. I'm not gonna wear my tinfoil hat today, but why any president would fly on a plane donated, by a nation like Qatar, or really any foreign nation for that matter, where they would build it and possibly have a way to, put a ghost in the machine that could cause some kind of a failure. So I don't know. I guess we'll get this ironed out. But, now the South Carolina governor has to appoint somebody to take over Lindsey Graham's seat. And allegedly it's going to be his sister. Now, I don't know Lindsey Graham's sister. I don't know anything about her. I don't know what her qualifications are. But, yeah, it's just to fill out the term until January. But you never know when an important vote could come up. She just sort of came out of nowhere. But that's up to the governor of that state. And I don't think there's enough time to have a special election. If you had a special election, what would it happen in in October, and then you're going to have another election in November? I don't know. But it looks like the balance in the Senate is not going to change because there will be, I believe in Kentucky, they won't have a special election because there's not enough time, and the governor has to appoint somebody, but they've got some kind of weird law that it has to be like one of three candidates that the three names the Republicans give him, and they have a Democrat governor, Andy Bashir. So I'm not sure what's going to go on there, but I don't think the balance is going to change. If they could, they'd keep Mitch McConnell alive in a jar of blue liquid if it could get him past the date where they wouldn't have to have a special election. People overseas probably think we live in a weird country, and I guess we do. But anyway, I'm chasing in my mind. I'm out in my backyard chasing a squirrel around with a tennis racket. It's just been kind of a crazy week, but par for the course. Anyway, I hope everybody has a good day. And if you're on the interstate highway and you're driving, please stay out of the left lane unless you're passing somebody. It seemed like things are getting better for a little while, but now so many people, I see people get on the interstate and they get way over in the left lane and they just set their cruise control. And they don't worry about who's up behind them, who's going around them on the right or anything like that. And people will say, well, I'm only going the speed limit, so I'm safe. Well, not really. You're causing conditions where it could cause other people to be in accidents. You get the accordion effect, and then you get people bobbing and weaving trying to get around a slow person. Just get on the highway and move to the right. If the speed limit's 70 and you're going 75, 78, or even 80, and somebody comes up behind you, what harm is it to move into the right lane? Let Speedy Gonzalez go by you, and then the cops will go after him, and then you can continue on your way. Just a thought. Anyway, that's enough for today. Peace.